Okay, everybody, coast is clear.
Hey, I really like watching movies. There's something about that action and that adventure and those plot twists that just make me enjoy every part of it. This week's reading was in the book of Ruth, and it was only 4 chapters long, but it's packed with so many good adventures and plot twists along the way. Reading through the book, it kind of reminds me of this type of movie. The ones that you watch and you think you know how it's going to end, but suddenly the story takes a turn and you're surprised about what's happening. The story starts out in the city of Bethlehem in Judah. This setting is important because this is where God's people, Israel, they live. It's the land that God has given them through battles and perseverance and trusting in Him. It's in the beginning of the story that we see a family leave this land and go to a city that wasn't so faith-friendly, a city called Moab. Now, at first glance, this is no big deal. There's a famine in the land, so it seems logical to move to a place where you can find some food and water. So the dad, Elimelech, mom, Naomi, and their 2 sons, they head out to start a new life. The family lives there for about a decade, the sons get married, they settle in, and life was going great. Then bam! The next thing we know, Naomi's husband dies, her 2 sons die. It's just the most tragic plot twist ever. Pause here for a moment. Think about a plot twist in your life, a moment that you didn't see coming. How did you feel? And how did you react? After the death of her husband and sons, Naomi told her daughters-in-law that she was going to go back to the land where she was from. Ruth, her daughter-in-law, did not abandon Naomi, even though she had no obligation to stay, but she followed her mother-in-law to Bethlehem. Ruth, she showed love, kindness, and devotion, and on the way back, she made a public profession of her faith that God would be her God. Upon entering the city, people saw and wondered about the women. Naomi, she made it very clear that she was frustrated with God about her life's circumstances, maybe even blaming Him a little bit for what happened. Let's pause again real quick right here. Is there a time in your life that you blamed God or got mad at Him for what has happened to you? But if we recall the beginning of the story, it was Naomi and her family that walked away from the land and the provisions that God had given them. They chose to walk away from where God had brought them, away from the people of God and away from the place of His presence. Isn't that true of us today too? How many times have we walked off of the path that God has for our lives and gone our own way? How many times have we sinned and sinned and sinned again? But it wouldn't be a good story if it didn't involve a love scene and another turn. After Naomi and Ruth, they're settled in, Ruth started working in the fields and met a man named Boaz. In the end of the story, Boaz married Ruth and bought the family property. God had a plan all along for Naomi, Ruth, and for His people, even though it didn't always seem like it to Naomi and her family. And one of the coolest parts? Ruth and Boaz's son would become the grandfather of David, that famous king of the Old Testament, and the one whose lineage would lead to Jesus. There's no way Naomi and Ruth could have predicted that their family line, their legacy, would be carried on like this. But God did. He has a plan, and it was from the very beginning when He told Eve that her offspring would crush the head of the snake. And God's plan for salvation and redemption remains true, even when His children make mistakes. And for the conclusion of the story, well, we don't know the exact ending, but we do know that through Jesus' perfect sacrifice, our life story continues on too. That in the hard times, we can turn to Him instead of our own way. He gives us the gift of the Holy Spirit to help us live the way He showed us. And He gives us His Word, the Bible, to help keep us in the presence and in relationship with Him.